Hello, tsm311. I hope Labor Day has gone well for you. We missed your shining faces, but we did want to make sure we did get to touch upon these topics. I'll be quick. Uh, One thing that we really want to make sure we highlighted for you are some aspects of demand change. This is a major factor that's driving the way our humanity in the food web will change in the coming years. You know, population increases are going to be massive between now and the midpoint in the century. Here is an example of a similar period of time, about a 30-year time span from the 60s to the 90s in the 20th century. The chart here is demonstrating the increase in fish consumption. You see in the first column here, industrialized countries. That's the U.S. And you can see even in that region, this is effectively the time immediately after the Green Revolution and subsequent times. So even in the U.S., a time like this is when we began to see huge changes in demographics in the U.S., increased protein consumption even in the U.S. We saw that in a similar period of time in East Asia, and we're expecting many of these other countries here to follow. This is, of course, during a time where we're thinking that approximately 75% of the world's fish stocks have been consumed in our humanity, due to our humanity in the food web and its human and environmental interactions. Here is an example, a little bit more recent, data taken from 95 to 2005 to 2014. Consumption of hogs. Each one of these little piggies here represents 20 million hogs slaughtered. China versus the U.S. Left side China versus the U.S. Of course, populations in those two different nations are much different than one another, but you can also see that the growth rate of this type of consumption, especially very recently, this is the period of time after the previous chart I've shown you, has significantly increased and nearly doubled in that same period of time. Okay, and here is cereal grain consumption. Now, the primary use for our cereal grains are livestock feeds. Okay, that growth rate has continued, and this is projected to continue off into our future. Not likely to stop. So, for your reference, this represents some demand increases that links approximately 50% of our total carbon dioxide emissions to agriculture. Based on this production here and this increase in production during that time. And then similarly, that same amount of emissions actually represents about 15% of overall human emissions of carbon dioxide gases due to our livestock production systems. Here's another way that we see our increasing demand for resources being shown in our environment. This curve is very famous curves produced from the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii, representing parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And this sawtooth effect, many of you may know this already, but it's important to remember. The sawtooth effect is due to photosynthetic activity, uptake on the downward portion of these curves, representing uptake of carbon dioxide due to photosynthesis occurring in the field. On the upward swing, it's after harvest has occurred, winter generally speaking in the northern hemisphere, and no uptake occurring to green crops, and it's demonstrably being shown in the dynamic day-to-day fluctuations in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now, of course, the overall trend is increasing, associated with increasing consumption and use of fossil fuels in our atmospheres. So, to wrap up, there's a video. If you want to type out this link here in your web browser, you can get a little bit more depth. One of the readings that you're visiting this week's by Lester Brown. There's an interview with him posted on this Fora TV website, running out the global food crisis, and he paints a fairly grim picture, mainly related to increasing demands that end up being in the agricultural sectors. If you all have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. We'll be happy to answer any questions. Hope all is well.